Good morning, everyone. To our friends in Latin America, early morning, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., welcome. Good afternoon, good night to some of you. Welcome all. We are thrilled to have you with us this morning. I'd like to I have the pleasure to introduce Ambassador Yuval Fuchs, who's the Deputy Head of Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation. Mashav is responsible for the design, coordination, and implementation of the State of Israel's Development Cooperation Program, promoting the centrality of human resource and capacity building. Mashav has trained close to 270,000 course participants from approximately 132 countries in Israel and abroad. Ambassador Fuchs served previously as ambassador to the State of Israel in Georgia, DCM in Moscow, and in various postings around the world in Prague, Berlin, and of course at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem. My name is Chava Kari, the director of MCTC in Haifa. We are happy to be able to host you today. I am here together with Sarah Wilner, deputy director, who will be taking your questions after the talk. Everyone's microphone is muted now, and we ask you to please try and keep them muted so we don't have outside noise. And please write your questions in the chat, and we'll be happy after Yuval's talk to take as many questions as possible. So please, Ambassador Fuchs, we're very happy that we're able to host you this morning from Jerusalem. Welcome. There are many people waiting to hear you, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chava. Thank you very much, Chava. I think I'll skip the self-presentation. Just say that I'm really honored and privileged to take part in this conversation. I hope it will be a conversation, not just a lecture. I think the nature of our subject today is cooperation, or in one way or another cooperation. I'll just add to what Chava kindly said that I'm a Haifa born, not very far from MCTC. So despite being right now in Jerusalem at the ministry, I'm a very proud Haifa boy. And it's great to have this online lecture together with MCTC. Of course, we would prefer to have the opportunity to have it in real terms somehow, but this is due to the COVID-19 epidemic is impossible right now. But good to have this technology, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning from wherever you are, joining us in Haifa and in Jerusalem. And I would suggest we go right away to a small presentation that was prepared by my friends and colleagues. Wonderful, thank you. Again, good morning, wherever you are. There is a Jewish tradition and a Jewish say which goes, "Ametzil nefesh achat beIsrael, כאילו הציל את העולם כולו," in Hebrew. To English, it means he who saved one soul as if he saved the whole world. This is a very long and ancient Jewish tradition of helping the others. I believe, and from my best knowledge, there are similar traditions and notions in other religions, such as Caritas organizations in the Christian world, Muslim social organizations, and of course, various NGOs, civil NGOs, religious NGOs, and other NGOs, which put as their main objective assisting others. Now, today, as you all know, we mark the World Humanitarian Day. This day was introduced by the United Nations to commemorate humanitarian workers who were killed or injured in the course of their work, in memory of the events of 19th of August 2003, the bomb attack on Canal Hotel in Baghdad. Now, this year with COVID-19 pandemic, it is in a way easier for us to grasp the necessity to assist each other and to assist the others. It has not always been like this. It's not a common or a simple notion. Why should we assist the others? Now, speaking about the UN, just one more detail. In the charter of the UN, it stated that, and I quote, "The purpose of the UN is," here begins the quote, "to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of economic, social, cultural, and or humanitarian characters," end of quote. Now, again, this is very clear, I think, at least to me, when you think about the establishment and the creation of the United Nations shortly after World War II, with the enormous challenges, the destruction, the immigration, the poor, the sick, and so on, devastated Europe, and not only Europe, shortly after World War II. Now, in the UN structure, the organization which is in charge of coordination or coordinating the UN and international efforts is called OCHA, which is the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Aid. But beside OCHA, there are various agencies which are dealing with humanitarian assistance. I'm sure you know them. I will just name few of them, of course, not all of them. UNDP, UNHCR, UNICEF, WFP, today, of course, WHO, which is the World Health Organizations, and many others. Now, when you look back at the history and the development of humanitarian assistance in the idea, the notion, and in practice, you see a line or evolution from moral convictions sometimes, or probably at the beginning of the fuse, to which was accompanied by some theological background or theory or dogma that evolved first to religion associated organizations, again, such as the Caritas, various organizations. But it proved itself not to be enough if you think about the situation of the world, of Europe, other parts of the world, Asia, after World War II, and so evolved from moral conviction through theological theory or dogmas, and then the activity of FUSE and social NGOs, then evolved a structured international cooperation, which is orchestrated, or at least aimed to be orchestrated, by international organizations such as the UN OCHA and the other UN bodies, and of course also by nation states. Now, this is a matter of dealing with man-made or nature-made catastrophes, which were much bigger than what man knew in the past, not necessarily in scope of the disaster, but due to the improving communication between all of us long before the internet and before international media. Of course, today, as we speak right now, via Zoom or other media technologies that we didn't know just yesterday, the effects of something which may begin in China or somewhere else are soon felt all over the globe. And even if they are not felt all over the globe, like COVID-19, which is a clear case, which we and our parents did not know. As you all know, the last time in history was about 100 years ago with the Spanish flu. But even if it does not affect every corner of our globe, we all know, we are all aware about wood fires in California or Australia, or earthquakes or other disasters such as famine in East Africa, in Yemen, and so on. And of course, dealing with such with measures of disasters, with the huge challenges, there was a need to move to a more orchestrated and structured response and reaction. Now, despite the clarity that we all feel in one way or another as human being, or as just as persons who are following the news, still there are the notion of humanitarian assistance raises many questions. One has to admit there are questions about the effectiveness or effectivity of humanitarian aid, and there are questions about why on earth should a state, and the UN is also based on money which comes from states, from the member states. So why a state should take taxpayer money, Israel or wherever you are from, why to take taxpayer money and send it somewhere else? After all, we all have our needs, we all have our challenges, if it's during COVID-19 or any other time. It's our money, we worked for it, and we have our own challenges. If we're Israel, if we're Germany, if we are Argentina, or wherever you're from. And this is a very good question. And this is a question that aid organizations such as Mashav, such as other organizations or NGOs, which are working very hard to raise contribution, we all have to face that. We all have to give a good answer to mainly to ministries of finance in our home countries, to convince them that this is a necessity, Now, along the development of humanitarian aids, there were various stations. I would like to mention just one, or to add one more to those that I mentioned before, that some of us may remember the huge Live Aid concert in 1985 and other actions, which was probably the first times in history of mankind, due to the possibilities of technology back then, to have such an action, which will be a global action to assist. In the case of Live Aid, it was a famine in Ethiopia. And still, we know that this concert, with all the celebrities who took part, and very many good people who donated money, this was based on me and you. I was too young, but basically it was based on our goodwill as, so to speak, citizens of the world, in this case, not citizens of Israel. So just as a person, as a human being, to donate my money. It wasn't state money, to my best knowledge, which was collected or contributed. Things, again, have developed positively, I believe, as somebody who represents an aid and development organization, but there are good questions, and we have to discuss these questions and confront them. Few words about Mashav, for those of you who are less familiar with Mashav, beyond what Chava said in her opening remarks. Mashav was established by Golda Meir back in 1958, so it's 62 years back. We just celebrated 2 years ago our 60th anniversary. Golda Meir, many of you may know her. Back then, she was the first lady foreign minister of Israel. It was before she became prime minister later, in the early 70s. And Golda Meir happened to tour Africa, West and East, and again West, and came back with the idea, why won't we establish something within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I'm almost certain, though I don't know for sure, but I'm almost certain that she didn't use the term aid agency. It was a small department or division within her office. Back then, we were much smaller than today, which dealt with women empowerment and other issues that we are dealing with. All those issues still today in MCTC, in MATC, in METC, and with other organizations that Mashav is working with. I recommend, for those of you who do not know, just to look up our different sites, Facebook and so on. There is plenty of on information and good work that has been done and is being done by all of my colleagues. Now, think about it. Israel, 1958, is 10 years young, a poor country, really poor. The GDP per capita of Israel back then is just a bit over $1,000 per capita again, which is, even back then, in terms of money in the late 50s, is not a lot. And today, it's that sum nominally would be very low. If you compare it to today's standards, you take the same numbers, that makes one of the poorest country on earth. We were not one of the poorest country on earth, but a poor country, a country of 2.5 million citizens. Today we are almost 10, with very small GDP, struggling with waves of immigration still after World War II, and not only that, and of course struggling with enormous social and of course security challenges. Some of them we still have to challenge today. And Golda Meir goes to David Ben-Gurion, the founding father of Israel, back then the first prime minister of Israel, and convinces him to establish that department from a very small and modest, I would say, beginning. It evolved to something that we are very proud of, an institution, an agency which trained more than 300,000 people in more than 140 countries throughout the years, in Haifa, in Shfaim, and in other places, and of course overseas. Now, from the very beginning, the very creation of Mashav, there was this bit of balancing act between the moral and the practicality, if not to say the interest. After all, it's a ministry, it's a governmental ministry, it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is not the Ministry of Goodwill. But it was there from the very beginning. And I would like to read you two quotes with your permission. One from David Ben-Gurion, where he says, Israel has been granted the great historic privilege, which is also a duty, of helping to solve the greatest problems of the world. So this says David Ben-Gurion back in 1961. Golda Meir, a few years later, says, the truth is that we did what we did in Africa, not because it was just a policy of enlightened self-interest, but because it was a continuation of our own most valued traditions and an expression of our own deepest historic instincts. So you see in those quotes, and it goes on and on throughout the years, that there's always been this balancing act between, on the one hand, interest as state ministry and a very deep moral conviction. Now, what I would like to claim or to share with you is this is not only a moral conviction, and there is not much of a contradiction here. Some would say there is, but I think there is not much of contradiction between your moral conviction and interest or policy of the state of Israel or any other state for that matter. And why is that? You think about, take Europe. I don't know if there are any who are participating right now from Europe. Take Europe, the big waves of immigrants which are arriving or have been arriving Europe from Syria or from North Africa, from other places, from Iraq in recent years. I believe it is easy to convince ourselves that there is also a matter here of stability, regional stability and security, by taking care, or at least trying to minimize the situation by assisting, reaching out to those people who are in need wherever they are, while they're still at home, creating for all of us living conditions in dignity and some prosperity, which will enable us to enjoy schooling, food, of course, to enjoy clothing, to enjoy the good rates that we know. Of course, today under COVID-19, there is this huge shadow over all of us. But normally speaking, to enjoy the good healthcare that we enjoy, at least in Western countries, the low child mortality percentage, the low maternal mortality percentage, and so on and so on. I think once we have established, if not the same, if not similar, but at least somehow similar, somehow dignified conditions all over, that will make a huge contribution to stability, regional stability, and peace beyond what it contributes in a more egoistic understanding of the matter, that it improves, or sometimes it improves, or one may help that it improves bilateral relations between countries. I have to say, being open with you, we are a state institution. We are not a UN institution. Of course, we work very closely with all the relevant UN institutions, and we try to cooperate with all of them, with NGOs and other organizations. But at the end of the day, we have to deliver, and we have to give account to our bosses, which is our government. Again, to summarize that point, I am convinced that there is no contradiction here whatsoever, because it goes hand in hand. This moral conviction, our duty, and what we do for the sake of others is in a wider context. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in a wider context, it helps us. Beside the fact that for me as a person, and I believe many of us today, probably all of us who joined this conversation right now, we are convinced that at the end of the day, we have to be good people. And that the purpose of the state is not just to be a state, but we have to ask ourselves what kind of a state we would like to be. So there are many answers on that, but we would like to be a good state. Now, of course, you would ask me what is a good state, but I think one good answer, what is a good state, is a state which helps the poor not to be poor, a state which takes care of sick people or people who are in need, and not only in your own community, but also beyond your own community. I think we are privileged, as David Ben-Gurion, privileged to have this duty. It's funny to say, but we are privileged to have this duty to help not only ourselves. Now, going to more practical matters. Since very early this year, with the explosion, so to speak, of COVID-19 throughout the world, very early in February already, I think back then there was not even one case of COVID-19 in Israel, but we understood that this is a different era. This is different challenge that we are to deal with. And we took a strategic decision to channel all the resources that we had back then, and all the resources that were added later with kind assistance of our minister and the directors of the ministry to channel all the resources, manpower, and money to deal in one way or another with COVID-19. So one response was to structure and to offer online courses, such as our lecture here and many other lectures. You would again find them listed and published on the sites and Facebooks of our training centers. And the other channel, as we cannot still and could not, and I don't see it's coming tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, either send our experts in irrigation or water management or healthcare or education. We cannot send them to Cameroon or to Nepal or to Chile, and we cannot invite people here to Israel, to Haifa and to Jerusalem to take part in Mashav courses as always. So we decided to concentrate mainly on humanitarian assistance on the ground. These efforts are directed or operated, so to speak, by our embassies, by our ambassadors. If I have the right numbers, we have already some 70 cases where we reached out and sent some assistance to communities in need. It may be food, it may be health supply, or COVID-19 related needs you may think of. Anything which came to us through our embassies and ambassadors, from water purification machines to flying over children from Tanzania a week ago, with people who accompany them to go through a heart operation in Volson Hospital, not far from Tel Aviv. We also took the opportunity or used that channel to assist Israeli NGOs, which are active in various places, such as Uganda, such as Central America. You don't have to invent the wheel. There are people who are, if not on the ground right now, due to the situation still, there is a project such as in Kiboga, Uganda, a local hospital which deals with non-transmittable diseases, but also with other diseases. And of course, everybody is under enormous pressure right now, and everybody needs help. In one case, our assistance went to the creation or establishing restrooms for medical teams in a hospital. These people are really, as you all know, challenged right now with lots of working hours. And we found that a good way to reach some assistance. I don't want to take much further of the Q&A time. I just want to raise, before I finish my introduction, one question that I find very good one. There is this, if someone would like to provoke me or us who believe in humanitarian aid, he or she might say, hey, this is nice and good, but A, this will not solve the problem right now, or it will solve only one part of the problem. And B, it will never solve the real problem, because the real problem is not aid, it's development. And development is many things. It's capacity building, it's investments, it's the private sector, it's the governments, it's commitment, and so on and so on. And we all know, I believe people who are with us here this morning, we are all dealing with development in one way or another. This is a challenging, complex, and long process to go up the ladder from Malawi through India, maybe to a developed country. Things I said before, the way that Israel made, and that's a good example. And yes, it is a good answer. Oh, sorry, a good question. And still, I believe there are cases in history where, first of all, you have to reach out and to give aid. This is, I think there is no no question about that. And then, of course, it has not, or it must not stay at that level. We all understand and hope that beyond sending food supply, immediate food supply for people not to starve, we have to work on development to assist them in developing their own economy, small business, food, etc., etc. But we all hope we will be able to come very soon back dealing more with development and maybe a bit less with aid. But right now, this is the I would say this is something our duty living throughout this pandemic, and we are proud to be part of it. We are proud and grateful for all of you who are joining forces and creating partnerships with us or with others, because this is a huge challenge. But we all know that basically we are spoiled, the world, and we can solve it. We can make it true that people will not be hungry. We cannot make sure that nobody will be sick, but we can make better that people who are sick are enjoying some basic health care. We can do better that children will go to school and enjoy education, that mothers will be able to go to work, not only look after their kids or work in their backyard and maybe creating some small business or maybe even big business. So yes, aid and development goes hand in hand. There are times where we have to focus on one thing, and hopefully soon there will be better times for all of us and good health, of course, to everybody, where we will move back and deal more, as we all hope, with development. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Sarah, would you like to see what the questions are for the ambassador?
Thanks, Chava, and thank you, Ambassador, for this interesting lecture. There is a question about how do you see the private sector involved, and if you can discuss a little bit the partnerships that Moshav may have with the private sector in humanitarian assistance.
Okay. Should we take one question at a time, or? Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
First of all, there are many from the private sector who are already involved in aid in one way or another, through charity organizations or through foundations which they created. Just think about the example that we all know about Bill Gates and his huge foundation dealing with malaria and other diseases, but he is not the only one. Now, you don't have to be as big as Bill Gates. I wish everybody to be, but but you don't have to be as big as Bill Gates and Melinda to make some contribution. So this is easy. Now, the other way is to partner, to make partnerships. Let's think about a company who is making its money from building hospitals in Africa. I think it makes sense to partner right now, not only right now, but right now for sure, with aid organizations, with NGOs, governments, and so on, to create some kind of a PPP model, a private public partnership, or any other model that an instructor could easily or easier construct part of a hospital, new part or renovate a part, but he or she or it may not have other resources or capacities, such as the training program, which is necessary to make it effective. So this may come from another partner, such as Mashab, but it may be another organization. So I think the key word is beyond, of course, beyond contributions, is partnership. There is a huge discussion which probably will go on at the OECD, which is the Organization of Developed Countries, whether private sector money can be considered as ODA, as official development assistance. At some point of time, it will be agreed, and it will be like that. So maybe not every penny, but at some point of time, it will be like that. Because if you compare all the money in the world, which is put via private sector, to all the money in the world, which is put via government, NGOs, and United Nations, the comparison goes like this. And I'm speaking only about in the context of development, not in the context of, selling CDs or anything of the sort. But this is still a long way. Short answer is partnership. We from Mashav, we are very modest here. We encourage our ambassadors to partner with Israeli companies, but not only Israeli companies. So if we install some water filtration in Ethiopia, this is a matter from this week. We encourage our embassy in Addis Ababa to do it in cooperation with an Israeli company who developed technology. And of course, I would be grateful if the company would be kind enough to make a different price for that matter, or to make some contribution for that matter. So this is a partial answer which I can give right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have another question. What do you see are the main challenges that humanitarian aid is going to face in the future?
One of the challenges is always financing. That's always a challenge. I don't know how big it will be. The other challenge is how to make sure that money that we raise, either private sector or government or private people who collect money for something, how do we make sure that beyond the immediate crisis that we confront at that situation, the crisis might be tiny or big or huge, how do we make sure that we create some sustainable development, that the money will not be, just swallowed for good purpose, I leave aside all the questions about corruption and so on, and these are still good questions, but I leave them aside, as if there is no corruption in the world, as if no money goes to other purposes which was collected for good purposes. But let's leave that aside still. How do you make sure, okay, so there was a famine in East Africa, but how do you make sure that you make some development, that next time it happens, you are better prepared, not only in terms of preparedness and readiness, but also in terms of the population will there, the community will be more resilient, will produce more food or other necessities, and will not be as much dependent as it was during the crisis you are dealing right now. So the move from aid right now to something more stable, to development, to being able to assist yourself, at least partially, that's a very big challenge. And coordination, always. I took part together with you, Sarah, about a year ago in not far from Washington, DC, about Mozambique. We had from some Israeli NGOs which were there after floodings some months earlier. So it's about a year and a half ago. And we heard about the huge coordination efforts on the ground. That's always big. But that's more a technicality, I think. That's solvable. It's difficult, but it's solvable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Big challenges ahead now. How do you see the role of the digital world now? We're sort of starting to see it now with the COVID-19. And what place do you see it taking in humanitarian assistance?
It helps. Surely it helps. You think right now we are communicating, so it's not that food goes through. it's more food for thought. But there is better communication, which is quicker. So again, communication, coordination. And to some extent, think about communities in Africa, and not only in Africa, where there is no telephone lines. And there will never be telephone lines because it's not necessary anymore. Everybody has in his or her pocket right now, I can't raise my handy because we use it, but everybody has his or her handy. We have all the apps to transfer money or to monitor the weather, monitoring the weather or getting instructions in real time. Should I water this morning or shouldn't I water? How much should I water this morning, etc., etc. So it helps, but at the end of the day, I think what makes the difference is people and people on the ground. The communication is a tool, and probably in 20 years' time, probably in 2 years' time, there will be better communication tools. But still, at the end of the day, you will have to reach out and get there. And this is one of the things that Mashav is very proud of. We're absolutely, we're a small organization. And we're not a huge funding organization. We are not a funding organization at all. Our main efforts when we do development is capacity building and capacity building, training in Israel, consultations, or do it overseas, wherever it takes place. And we are very proud being such small, so that our people, and I speak about us, I speak about Chava, I speak about Sarah, and I speak about myself, and I speak about every Israeli ambassador. We go out there. So we may not be expert. I'm not an expert. I'm a bureaucrat. I'm a trained diplomat, not like Chava and Sarah, who are experts. But we go hand in hand, together with our experts, boots on the ground, to the field, in the mud. And this shortening of the line or of the chain, I think helps a lot. So communication is great, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool. You have to be there, to understand, to communicate, and to deal with real issues. Real tomatoes are not growing via internet. Real tomatoes are going out there somewhere.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. Could you discuss a little bit of Mashav's goals for the years ahead?
Oh, that's a tough one, but thank you for that. I first of all, I really wish everybody here and back home and your families generally everybody, that we soon will overcome COVID-19. There will be a vaccine or whatever, and it's a very heavy load on all of us. Those of us who are healthy, those of us, God forbid, sick, or family members. And we are living in a closed world in the most genuine sense of the word. We cannot go where we cannot travel, not only for holiday, but we can hardly go from one place to another. And I hope we will overcome that. And I hope for everybody that we will keep healthy and safe, and the economy will grow again for our communities and for our family members and for all of us. We don't know when the sky will be open. We hope that during 2021, at some point, somehow, sky will open, and we will have to relaunch our activities in the renovated MCTC, which is in Sarah's background, you can see, and not only there, in all Mashav centers, sending people. We have big plans to send people to all corners of the world, to short-term missions, to longer-term missions, going back, dealing with our partners and our partnerships. That's a big challenge in itself. And I cannot predict how long will it take. But beside that, of course, we always want to make sure that we are even more effective, we're even more professional, and we are even more to the point in a very short time. Maybe last word from myself. We are small and not very rich, but we are very proud to make each dollar worth a lot. And here, this is maybe something that I don't know if it's Israeli, I don't know if it's Mashav. For sure it's Mashav, but maybe it's more than that, that we make every dollar make a lot, and make sure it happens in the future again. And going back, dealing with all those challenges, there are still many children hungry before COVID-19, and they will be hungry after COVID-19, or sick people, not because of COVID-19, and education, and gender gap, and many other issues that we all want to come back dealing with. That's the plan, shortly said. So I'd like to thank you. If there are no more questions,
actually, we did receive one more question. You might, if you have time.
Please, okay. No problem.
From Noel, who's a natural organic farmer in India, and he's asking if there are any ongoing natural organic farming projects by Mashav in India.
Again, sorry.
He's
what
asking
projects?
If there are any farming projects by Mashav in India.
In India.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I'd like to thank. What was the name again?
Noel.
Noel, thank
Yeah.
you for the question. Yes, there is an enormous project. As a matter of fact, the biggest project of Mashav is in India. We're speaking about almost 30 by now, centers of excellence in various places of India in 6 clusters. The 6 clusters are different horticulture crops such as mango, citrus, vegetables, beekeeping, flowers, and one more cluster I forgot right now. In each cluster, there is more than one center. The plan is to expand even further. Those Center of Excellence is a joint project of the government of India, the central government, and the local governments of the different states. We would like to expand to have more centers of that kind. They use mainly as a training institution, but not only that, also as vegetable nurseries for the farmer from the region and so on. And there is an idea of go beyond the center and reach out to the villages in the area of the center. So making it not only a center of excellence, but making it villages of excellence, not one village, but many villages of excellence, which will enjoy the services, the training, the guidance, and so on of the relevant center, or maybe even more than one center if there are several centers. So shortly, it's a yes, there is such a project. As a matter of fact, this is a very big project of Moshav, the biggest that we have, and I wish we had something like that in many other countries. Right now, it's something quite unique. Look it up. If you don't find, don't hesitate to send us a mail, and we will send you some materials. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're going to close now. We know how important humanitarian aid is today during the crisis, saving lives and helping maintain the human dignity. We see online many aid organizations. I won't mention you all. And I also see Yitzhak Abt online, who is great to see you. So nice to see you for all the wonderful work you did for so many years together with Moshav. So we salute all the aid organizations. You're all doing great work. And thank you to Ambassador Fuchs for this informative and very interesting talk, and for the wonderful relief work that Moshav is doing at this during this crisis and all through the years. So thank you very much, Ambassador Fuchs.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה לכולם. אני מצטער שאני לא יכול לראות את המשתתפים.